I get the opportunity to introduce somebody that everybody in here knows, so I'll try to be brief. But it's my pleasure to get to know Michael and introduce Michael Waters, the Assistant City Manager of Kingsport. A few things that you may or may not know. Michael's a native of Kingsport, actually, a graduate of Dobbins Bennett, where he enjoyed playing tuba in the DB band. So you can relate to that, some of you over at that table. After that, he earned a Master's of Public Administration degree from East Tennessee State University. And after graduation, he worked as a general manager at McDonald's, then in the planning department for the town of Irwin. From there, he became the recorder for the town of Unicoi, and then most recently, city manager of the town of Pittman Center before taking this position. Michael lives in Fair Acres with his wife, Brittany, his 21-month-old son, Michael Jr., and his 5-month-old daughter, Ellie. Lively household. I think he said he was up pretty late last night.
Yes, this morning.
Oh, this morning, okay. He's an active tuba player with the First Broad Street Methodist Orchestra, serves on the board of Visit Kingsport and the board of United Way of Greater Kingsport. Michael's responsible for all the leisure services in Kingsport. I was most impressed when I read the list of things that goes all the way from Meadowview, the Cattails Golf Course to the library, and he won't have a chance to cover all that today. And I was going to read them all, but he said, just say anything to do with fun, I take care of. Anything to do with potholes, Ryan takes care of. So with that, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Michael Waters.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. So we're going to go over a brief overview, or try to keep as brief as we can, of leisure services projects. So we have a lot of projects going on. We're going to try to hit on the major projects. So to, I guess help if I turn it on first, wouldn't it? So what are we going to go over today? We're going to go over some park and rec projects, some Bays Mountain projects, and some library renovation projects. We have a lot of other projects that you're not going to see on this list. I'm going to try to leave some time at the end if you want to ask questions about that. I'm also going to show you where you can sign up to get an email that you'll actually be able to see our project list updated after every BMA meeting as well. So the first project we're going to talk about is in Parks and Recreation, and it's our Cement Hill project. So the city of Kingsport came into possession of that property during a pilot agreement in 2021. And so that further builds off of the former General Shell property that we have over there. And currently we have, our skate park. You kind of look at the screen on the left side. We have our skate park over there, our ball fields, our Blue Cross Blue Shield playground, Miracle Field, and all that. So it kind of builds onto that as well. And the intent of that was to build a passive park and a green space area in there. So one of the things we also did in 2021 was we adopted our Parks and Rec master plan. And so when you look at the things that people say they want, from the need for facilities to types of park activities to even spending priorities, as you can see here, I think the only thing that we didn't check our box off on Cement Hill was lacrosse. And I know some folks playing lacrosse, and they could probably find a way to do that too. So it really aligns well with our Parks and Rec master plan as well. So looking at the Cement Hill master plan, I know it's a little hard to see on this screen, so I'm probably just going to walk over here so I can point some of these things out. The first thing you'll notice here is we have a Great Lawn active space. So that's right at 5.5 acres. So that'll be nice to have another event option and another event space within Kingsport. So that's really one of the key focal points of this project. Another thing that we found out about, we actually did this for vegetation management, but everybody loved the goats. And so that's something that we look at, hey, potentially maybe we have a permanent goat colony up here. So we actually have a goat operations center over here. And then we actually have an area that you can kind of see delineated here that would actually host goats all the time. So we thought that was cool. And actually we also need it to help manage the kudzu. So I don't know if anyone I'm sure I see some smiles. So a lot of people probably had experience managing kudzu, and so goats are a great way to do that. Another great thing about this project is we have a trestle bridge that you can see right here. So that actually goes out, and it's about 40 to 50 feet off the ground and expands. And the great thing about that bridge is it lines right up with Broad Street, and so you have a great view looking right down downtown with an elevated trestle bridge there. Some other things we have here is a disc golf course, obviously walking trails, and as well as some mountain biking trails, which you can see in this lower area next to Scott Adams Skate Park. So that'll tie into that as well as the skills course. And we're actually going to talk about some opportunities to fund that later in the presentation. So
before you leave that, the housing that would be up there, where would that be in relation to this?
okay, so all your housing is on the east side of this property. So this is actually done in conjunction with the developer. And so you can see you have Brickyard Park Drive, which is tying into this roundabout. Martin Luther King's this road coming into here. And then you have Cherokee that's right up here where that pedestrian bridge is going.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And so our path forward on that is we're going to complete a voluntary brownfield agreement. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on that. If you have more questions about that, we can talk about that later. We are applying for a $500,000 brownfield grant called the BRAG later this month or sometime next month to hopefully kind of start that first stage of this project. We're going to continue to coordinate the master plan with the phasing options, as Gail pointed out, with the Brickyard development. And then we're going to continue our vegetation management because with kudzu, it's just something you got to do. And what that BRAG will allow us to do if we're successful is complete the infrastructure so that we're actually able to get up onto the hill. So that's kind of the major challenge with that site is improving it to where you actually have access and parking so that folks can get up there. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish in this first phase with that BRAG grant is just to be able to get up on the hill. Because once you get up there, I mean, the views speak for themselves. It's beautiful. I don't know how many people have been up there or seen it. That's also where we shoot fireworks off from. And there's an amazing view of our city from the hill. So we'll move on to Riverbend Park. So this is a park that opened in December of 23. It's a 22-acre park between Riverbend Drive and Wesley Road. And it has a half-mile trail along with a floating fishing pier. So that was the first phase and was completed using TIF dollars from the development there. And I have some pictures of that. There's a lot of things on the master plan. So it's 6 phases of the project. And it's really just an awesome site. It's very difficult to see the details, but I'll be glad to send this presentation to anybody who'd like it. So this is an aerial shot of that floating fishing pier we have. Which we've seen a lot of use out of that, and a lot of people fish out there. I know Ryan goes and fishes out there, and he says it's a great spot around. So some people dislike that we built this because now other people know it's a great fishing spot, but there you go. And then really it just has beautiful trails. And then once again, going back to that Park and Rec master plan that we adopted, walking trails are one of those things that our citizens really said that they enjoy. We have Charlie Stahl with us today from Johnson City, and so he actually comes from here to walk on our greenbelt for walking trails, so he can attest that's something that people like. So another great exciting project that we got to announce this year is the Blue Cross Healthy Place at Riverwalk Park. So this is a grant from the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee Foundation. It's the same grant that we got to build our first playground that's attached to Miracle Field. And so there's a lot of aspects to this project. It's actually a $6.5 million project that they're going to fund, they're going to build out. So it's great because they actually do all the work for that. So that's fantastic. And then they also give you a $1.3 million maintenance fund to help keep up the park over time, which is, so when you look at that total investment of a little under $8 million, that's huge for the city of Kingsport. So this also hits on a lot of things that we've talked about with various plans in Parks and Rec. And there's lots of features here from pavilions, sports courts, fitness areas, but really the thing that stuck out to me is it adds recreational water access, and that's something that we identify with the Whitewater study in the late 2010s. And that'll kind of be another one of those steps that we have to get people on the water and really use our natural assets for recreational uses. So the timeline on that is we're working through the design now, so we hope to have that completed this summer, and then from there we'll be able to determine a timeline. As with anything in construction right now, there's a lot of ifs out there on the timeline, so I don't want to throw anything out there yet, but keep an eye out, and we'll go from there.
Where will that be?
I'm sorry, so that is at the roundabout on Industry and Netherland Inn. So the roundabout's located right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so right now that's the green belt cuts under the bridge there on Industry Drive, and you kind of have that field there. We do have a pavilion with some exercise equipment, but that'll take place over that. So we're going to shift gears and talk about some Bays Mountain Park projects. So one of the things that we sat down and did with our Bays Mountain management team, so we have a relatively new park manager. She's been in that position for almost 2 years, as well as a chief ranger. We really had a conversation about where's the park going, what are we doing, what matters, and really helping refine what our next steps are as far as capital improvements with the park. And so to do this, we talked about doing a park improvement plan. So it's very similar to what we've done with the past, with the exception of we did land surveying prior to implementing the plan. So it actually is very cognizant of the topography, our water and drainage issues, which we have several of those at the park. And we're really excited about this plan. So there's 5 goals of this plan. The first was to improve the animal habitats. The second was to understand what the users of the park want. The third was improve our arrival sequence, as well as develop the Fox Den playground, which we'll see shortly. The fourth was to improve the overall aesthetic of the park. The fifth was the trail accessibility, and really just develop a comprehensible and actionable plan for those assets. So in that survey, and we actually did another one of these in 2021, and they pretty much lined right up with each other. So I think that's a telling sign that we know what people want. But the key reasons that people come to Bays Mountain Park is hiking and visiting animals. So they're pretty much neck and neck. And in the other survey, it was actually flipped where hiking was a little more desired than the animals. And so when you look at it, the 4 main reasons that people come to the park are hiking, to visit animals, the planetarium, and barge rides. And then we ask people, okay, well, when you start at Bays Mountain, where do you go to? And you can see that it's animal habitats, nature center, and hiking trails. And so that's really important as we talk about investments moving forward. So another question we ask is, what would you like to see next, and what would motivate you to make additional visits to Bays Mountain Park? And you can see here from the surveys that it's new animals, animal habitat improvements, hiking, and the playground. And so we're accomplishing all those things. The hiking trail was actually out of this, I'm sorry. So it accomplishes the other 3 though. So this is what Bays Mountain looks like right now, as I think we're all familiar with it. I think it was that way when I was a kid going to Bays Mountain Park and all those memories I had there. And so one of the things we did as we started this process is we took a lot of trips. So I know that Vice Mayor George stepped out, but she serves on the Bays Mountain Park Commission. So as we started walking through and determining where do we need to be as Bays Mountain Park in the future, we just started going to a lot of different parks. We went to Western North Carolina Nature Center. We've been to Grandfather Mountain. We went up to D.C. We've been to the Maryland Zoo at Baltimore. We've been to the Smithsonian, and we visited several other zoos, Knoxville, etc. And we gained a lot of information in doing that. We always got behind-the-scene tours with staff and a lot of insider information. But when you look at your high-end facilities, one of the things they do very well is your place-making zones. And so that each zone has a different, unique feel, so you don't feel the sameness of the whole animal habitats as you walk through them. So that was something that really we didn't think about until we took the time to go on those trips and then engage with a professional architecture firm. So we came up with the ridge, the knoll, the lake shore, ancient forest, and then the nature center arrival area. And so you can see what our master plan is and what came out of it. And I'm going to go to the next slide, which breaks it up into phases. Because another thing we wanted to do is we wanted a construction phase for if we were going to make these improvements, what makes the most logical sense, and have it in bite-sized pieces so that we can accomplish it. And so you can see that we have basically 12 different phases, which is a lot. But we're going to talk about a grant here in a second, which will actually knock out phases 1 through 3B, with the exception of 3A. So that would almost knock out a quarter of our entire plan with one grant. And so we're really hopeful that we get that grant and it's successful. So we're going to move on to some of those features. And this is also on Bays Mountain Park's website. So if you go to their website, you go to park, and then you go to overview of the park. You'll see right there, and you can look at it in much greater detail. One of the things that we're going to do is the otter habitat. So that's something that we've talked about, and otter was one of those animals that we got a lot of positive feedback on when ours passed away. You know, there was a lot of public support for that animal. So we went to a lot of different facilities to look at these otter habitats. And so really, I just wanted to throw this up there so that we can get an idea of what we're looking for. The cool thing about this habitat is it's actually right to the east of the nature center. So when you see this area with the shallow pool and the dry moat, you're actually only a few feet away from the balcony. So you'll be able to stand atop the balcony or have school groups up there, and you'll be able to look down into the habitat. We also have a deep pool area, which we're anticipating about have 4 feet of glass and underwater viewing. And we really think that this will be a great facility. And we've taken our time to go to a lot of facilities so that we know what to do, and more importantly, what not to do. Another thing that we've talked a lot about, and I don't know how many in here know David Brenda Fox, is the Fox Den Playground. So that's something that David and Brenda came to us with this idea to honor their son, Parker Fox. And there was a lot of community support behind that. A lot of donations flowed in, and actually enough donations that this project went from about $125,000 project to now we're looking at over $500,000 project. So as part of the park improvement plan, we're able to develop what this project will look like, and I think we have a really great plan moving forward. What'll be great about this playground is it'll be focused on being a natural playground. So it's not going to be your typical play core equipment where you have a lot of plastic or, you know, high sheen paints and things like that. We're really trying to focus on the natural elements because when you look at Bays Mountain and you look at why people would stay longer, it's there's not as much for kids to do, especially your younger kids. Now that I have an almost 2-year-old, you know, every Saturday we're going to parks and he just runs around and goes crazy. So adding an additional element that we can take kids to is going to increase visitors. We think it's going to increase visitor stay, and it'll help drive advocacy for the park. So the important question is always, well, how are you going to fund all of this? And so we have had great success so far with raising private dollars. So we're at over $2.5 million with our capital campaign. And so we're using those dollars to leverage state grant dollars so that hopefully we get around $5.6 to $5.8 million to start knocking out some of these projects. So we got the notice to proceed on our original grant, our pre-application. So now we're going to the application phase, and then we have a work session later this month. But if we're successful with this grant, we'll be able to knock out the first phase of the Nature Center is already underway. We expect that to be completed in May of this year, so next month. That was done through a generous gift by the Jim and Laura Rogers Foundation. We have the second phase of the Nature Center, which will feature a ginormous kids cave. We have the current kids cave at the Nature Center, but basically we're going to expand that entire bottom foyer area into one large ADA accessible kids cave, and as well as revamp the watershed exhibit into a cave exhibit. And that will also allow us, this grant will allow us to do the event terrace area, the entry walkway, as well as the otter habitat. And then we're actually going to use those funds also to jump over and do mountain biking trails adjacent to Cement Hill, as well as expand the parking and skills area at Scott Adams Skate Park. So we hope to hear back about whether or not we're successful with this grant application sometime in Q3 of this year. If we get it, we'll basically be under construction for the next 3 years up at the mountain. But when we get to the other side of it, it'll look completely different. So just going back to a reminder of the mountain biking trails, you can see on the bottom right hand of your screen next to Scott Adams Skate Park. So mountain biking is another thing we get a lot of requests for. So our projected timeline, and this is some of our timelines were pushed back to help align with the grant application. The Nature Center Phase 1 is underway right now. It's looking great. Cane Rash West and GRC are on that project. I was up there last week. It's looking fabulous. We have the Foxden Playground, which you kind of saw an initial site plan design. And so we expect that to go out to bid hopefully this summer and then have complete by the first half of 25. We have an observation tower, which is a grant through the Tennessee Tourism Department. We hope to have completed by the end of the year. The otter habitat we hope to have completed with a successful application for the LPRF by Q2 of 2026. If we're unsuccessful with the application, we still have the funding in place to move forward with the otter habitat, and we may be able to get it done a little sooner than that timeline, but it'll probably be pretty close. The Phase 2 will be dependent upon award of the LPRF, but we would hope to have that between mid-2026 and mid-2027. And then we adopted the park improvement plan with the board at our meeting in March. So moving on to the library, to talk about the renovation timeline we've had there. It's really something that's been on the radar for almost the last 15 years. And so there was an initial needs and feasibility study that was done in 2009. That came back at an estimating building cost of $12 million, would increase the library by 21,000 square feet. So that was obviously a large chunk to look at once. So we kind of changed to a phased approach and revamped the kids area in 2017, and then the colonnade in 2018. At that point, we came back to the facility study as well as a strategic plan. And one of the things that came out of it was, hey, we really need to try to get funding in order to do a renovation holistically of the entire facility rather than looking at the piecemeal pieces. So in 23, or earlier, I'm sorry, we're currently in 23. Earlier, we were awarded $6 million in ARPA funds, and so we're continuing design on that. And we hope to have that design finished by the end of this fiscal year or the beginning of next fiscal year. So what were those key themes that we got from those studies that we did? Well, the first thing, and you'll see data in a second, is we need a larger children's area, and we also need dedicated space for children's programming. So currently, the auditorium is used for all programming. So if there's an adult program going on or a children's program going on, it limits you to just having really one programmable space at a time. Another thing is a dedicated and expanded teen area. So currently the teens are kind of in a corner of a colonnade, so they don't really have a space to call their own. A new elevator, so it's actually an elevator that you can't get parts for anymore. A lack of study rooms, a dedicated local history and genealogy, and then just an overall updated facility as it's looking dated. So what we're accomplishing is all of those things. So in this plan, we're addressing every single one of these items, and we're very excited about it. So let's talk about some data really quick. So one of the things that fascinated me was the amount of digital circulation that we have in the library. And so if you didn't know, through a library card, you actually get access to ebooks, you get access to audiobooks, as well as other digital materials. And so to me, it was really interesting to learn how many digital resources were available. And as someone who lived in Sevier County and I had a 45-minute one-way commute, I realized I probably could have saved $400 a year from Audible if I'd had a Sevier County library card instead. So another thing that was interesting to me was our physical circulation. So these are all snapshots in time. So this would be February 24, but the data is pretty consistent. I just didn't want to stick it all up there, so we just used a snapshot. That our youth circulation makes up almost half. So when you include teens, it's actually 51% of our total physical circulation in the building. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier, the need for a larger children's area. So then you look at, okay, well, when we look at our digital versus physical circulation, how does that pan out? Well, we can see that our digital circulation actually surpasses our physical circulation, and that is pretty standard for us currently. So that's a couple things. One, I think that the use of digital resources is increasing. which is a positive thing. People are understanding that the library is a resource for that. And the second thing is that we've got to find a way to get more people in the door so our physical collection increases as well. So when you combine that together, you can see that the two big pieces of this pie chart are the Tennessee Reads, which is the digital checkouts, as well as which is all digital, and then our youth circulation, which is our physical checkouts. So those are, when you look at how our circulation is, those are the two main categories. So as we think about that data, we think about what the library study said, it moves on to what a design would look like. So one of the key things is right now our children's area is in that bottom left-hand corner. So you're very limited in space. It's very tight. Our shelves are pretty much packed. There's not a lot of room in them. And so we took that and made it into a staff area. We'll actually have a book sorting machine that faces New Street there. Then we're going to move the children's area upstairs. In the colonnade area, it's a perfect area for a reading room, as well as to put additional meeting rooms. And then moving on from there is we used to have a large staircase. We're going to replace it with a little bit smaller staircase, a little bit tighter footprint. And then we're going to change, currently going up to the mezzanine, there's kind of an odd stairwell. So we're going to change that to have a larger, more open stairwell. And in the mezzanine, we will have our teen and makerspace area. So that defines an area for them. And we also think about the data. Teen circulation is typically in the low single digits of our circulation. So really we want somewhere that teens can go, they can feel comfortable with, and hopefully we can increase that engagement and that circulation as well as that dedicated makerspace. So then moving on to the upstairs floor, where we're in the constraints of a building that already exists, is we really had to look at the entire west wing of the second floor as being our children's area. So this more than doubles the total square footage of our children's area. It adds a dedicated story time room that's flexible. So we'll have a storage room. So we'll be able to move tables out of the way, then have a more or less a room for play and those type of activities when story time is not in session. And so these are just kind of some concepts of some cool things that we can do with our kids area. So there's everything from light bright type walls to Lego stations to gaming areas to specific computers, and then going into the younger kids. There's Scrabble walls. There's different things you can do. There's different furniture elements, and there's a lot of details to that that I won't go into. But we're really trying to make this exciting and engaging for the kids to get them in the library so that they can really get bought into lifelong literacy. So that brings us to our timeline. So currently we're in the phase of completing our final design and construction process. We hope to have that wrapped up by the end of this fiscal year or early next fiscal year. We then will execute, hopefully we'll go out to bid, execute a contract, have that in place by Q3 of this year, maybe early Q4. We do have an agreement to take 3 suites at the mall, so we'll have about 15,500 square feet. It's about half of our total current building space, in which we'll move library services to. So we're working on what that would look like now, what services we'll be able to offer. We'll have construction, and we'll hopefully be back in the library Q4 26, Q1 of 27 is our current target. And we will update this as we get more information. And so one of the things we talked about in this library was making it unique, especially in your children's area. So while we do have those ARPA dollars for construction, we've worked with the Friends of the Library to really look at different things that we can have that would engage the children, that would really make our library unique and special. And so the Friends of the Library started a fundraising campaign. So if you're interested in that, you can go to kptfol.org/give. You can look at some information on there as well, or you can talk to other members of the Friends. And then here's some, you will see this on some billboards coming up so that we took. So that is Ellie there in the bottom left corner. So she already likes being read to, and I think she was not even 5 months old when we took that picture. So very excited about that. So another thing about projects is people always ask, hey, how do you stay informed of projects that are going on? There's always so many projects. go online to our website, sign up with your email address, and you'll get what's called our BMA Highlight newsletter. And then you'll just go to this little tab that says Update on Active Projects, and it'll take you right to our project listing. And it has everything on there from all of Ryan's sewer projects to the farmer's market to all sorts of fun stuff. So if you have any questions on projects, this is a great way to get it. And all our projects are updated on there. All right. I think I left around 10 minutes for questions. I'll be glad to take them.